Everything around the Pittsburgh Steelers right now feels like it's moving in two directions at the same time: urgency and patience. And that's not a contradiction. That's exactly where this franchise finds itself as it steps into a brand new era under Mike McCarthy. When you really slow this down and look at what's coming out of the building, especially regarding the quarterback position, you start to understand how calculated these next moves are going to be. McCarthy has been very clear since taking over. This is not a teardown. This is not a rebuild. This is a roster that was in the playoffs last season, a roster that won the AFC North for the first time in 5 years. Those words matter. When a head coach publicly frames the team as a playoff roster, he's setting expectations not just for fans, but for the front office, the locker room, and every decision that follows. The Steelers believe they can win now, but they also understand that now doesn't eliminate the need to think about next. That's where the quarterback conversation becomes impossible to ignore. Aaron Rodgers stabilized the position in a way Steelers fans hadn't seen in a long time. There's no denying the impact he had. The offense looked functional, controlled, and experienced. The problem is the uncertainty. Rodgers may have been a one-season solution. As of right now, there is no guarantee he returns. Even with Mike McCarthy back in his orbit, even with an offensive staff designed to appeal to a veteran quarterback, the Steelers cannot afford to be caught without a long-term plan. And this is where things get interesting, because while the present is still being negotiated, the future is already being studied closely. Down in Mobile, Alabama, at the Senior Bowl, NFL scouts from across the league were doing what they always do, evaluating the next wave of talent. One name, in particular, keeps surfacing when you talk to people connected to the Steelers' scouting presence there: Alabama quarterback Ty Simpson. Now, this isn't hype pulled out of thin air. According to reporting coming out of Senior Bowl conversations, the Steelers really like Ty Simpson. Not casual interest. Not "we'll see." Real, genuine evaluation level interest, even though Simpson was unable to participate due to injury. His profile, his tape, and his projection are clearly on Pittsburgh's radar. Simpson is one of the most intriguing quarterbacks in the 2026 draft class. His experience level is something scouts will debate since he didn't start games until this season, but the production jumps off the screen. He competes on every snap, he plays with urgency, he's mobile, he navigates the pocket well, and when the play breaks down, he can hurt defenses with his legs. Sometimes that aggressiveness works against him, but that edge is also what separates starting quarterbacks from backups at the next level. From a league-wide perspective, Simpson is already viewed as one of the top quarterbacks in the class. He's been ranked just behind Indiana's Fernando Mendoza, who many project as the top overall pick. That context matters because it tells you this isn't a mid-round flyer type of player. This is a first-round talent, and in some scenarios, a very early first-round talent. And that's where the tension sets in for Pittsburgh. The Steelers are currently sitting at the no 21 overall pick in the 2026 draft. In a quarterback class that looks thin at the very top, that draft position could make things complicated. There's a very real possibility that Ty Simpson is long gone by the time the Steelers are on the clock. Teams ahead of them, including quarterback-needy franchises, could see Simpson as their answer. There's even a scenario where he comes off the board as early as no to overall, depending on how the top of the draft unfolds. Alabama head coach Kalen DeBoer hasn't been shy about his belief in Simpson either. His message has been simple and confident. Don't doubt this player now and pretend you always believed later. That kind of endorsement doesn't guarantee NFL success, but it reinforces what scouts are seeing on film. So now the Steelers are standing at a crossroads that feels very familiar, yet very different. They may have a veteran quarterback who could return and give them another real shot right away. They also may be staring at a future quarterback they truly believe in, one who might not be easy to get without bold decisions. Do you protect your draft capital and wait, or do you position yourself aggressively if this is truly your guy? That's the question hanging over this entire situation, and it's only going to get louder as the draft approaches. What do you think the Steelers should do if Ty Simpson is the quarterback they really like, but he's likely to be gone early? Do they stay patient, or do they find a way to go get him? Because once you accept that this is the reality, the entire Steelers offseason starts to look different. This is no longer just about whether Aaron Rodgers comes back or not. This is about whether Pittsburgh is willing to act like a franchise that finally has clarity at quarterback evaluation, even if the timing isn't perfect. If Rodgers returns, the Steelers buy themselves something extremely valuable: time to develop, time to evaluate without panic, time to avoid forcing a young quarterback onto the field before he's ready. But time can also be dangerous if it creates hesitation. And that's the balance Mike McCarthy and the front office have to manage very carefully, because liking a quarterback and being positioned to draft him are two very different things. Ty Simpson's situation puts that dilemma right in the spotlight. The Steelers don't get to pick the board, they react to it. Sitting at no 21 overall means you are dependent on chaos ahead of you: trades, quarterback runs, teams reaching, And if Simpson is truly viewed around the league as a top-tier quarterback prospect, then history tells us waiting rarely works. Quarterbacks with first-round grades don't slide quietly into the 20s very often. That's why the phrase on their draft radar matters so much. It suggests this isn't casual homework. This is preparation. This is scenario building. This is the front office asking hard questions internally. What would it cost to move up? How far would they need to jump? Is this quarterback worth sacrificing future picks when you believe your roster is already playoff caliber? And that's where McCarthy's earlier comments come back into focus. When he says this is not a start-over opportunity, he's also saying the Steelers don't need a quarterback to save the franchise. They need a quarterback to elevate it. That distinction changes everything. You're not drafting out of desperation. You're drafting out of alignment. And those are the moments when teams are most dangerous. There's also another layer here that fans can't ignore. Even if Rodgers does come back for another season, the Steelers drafting a quarterback would not be a contradiction. It would be confirmation. Confirmation that the organization is done living year to year at the most important position in football. Confirmation that they are finally willing to let a young quarterback grow behind a proven veteran instead of throwing him into chaos. At the same time, the risk is obvious. Trading up in a thin quarterback class magnifies every mistake. Miss on the evaluation, and you've set yourself back multiple drafts. Stay put, and you might watch a quarterback you loved become the face of another franchise. This is the exact kind of decision that defines eras, not just seasons. And make no mistake, the Steelers know that. Their presence at the Senior Bowl, their attention to Simpson despite his injury, and the quiet confidence coming from people around the situation all point to a team that is thinking 2 steps ahead, not 1. They are trying to win now without borrowing recklessly from tomorrow. That's a difficult line to walk, but it's also the kind of challenge elite organizations embrace. The most fascinating part of all of this is that nothing needs to be decided today. That uncertainty is intentional. Let the board develop. Let Rodgers make his choice. Let the evaluations continue. But behind closed doors, the conversations are already happening. And when a franchise really likes a quarterback, that feeling doesn't disappear just because the math is uncomfortable. So now it's on the Steelers to decide who they want to be in this next chapter. A team that waits for value to fall into its lap, or a team that identifies its future and is willing to go get it when the moment arrives. This quarterback conversation isn't noise. It's a signal. And even after all of that, the ripple effects of this decision stretch further than just one draft pick or one quarterback prospect. This situation quietly shapes how the Steelers approach every other position on the roster. If the front office believes a young quarterback could be part of the near future, that changes how you invest in the offensive line, how you prioritize receivers, and how patient you are with certain veterans. Quarterback belief doesn't live in isolation. It rewrites the roadmap. This is why the Ty Simpson interest matters, even if Pittsburgh never ends up drafting him. It tells us how the Steelers are thinking again. They are no longer reacting late to quarterback problems. They are studying, projecting, and lining up options before the urgency becomes desperation. That alone is a shift from what fans have grown used to over the past several seasons. There's also something important about where this interest is coming from. This isn't just media speculation or fan-driven wishful thinking. This is information circulating among scouts at the Senior Bowl, the exact environment where teams go to confirm or challenge their internal grades. Even without Simpson throwing passes in Mobile, the Steelers were clearly comfortable enough with what they've seen to keep his name very much alive in their internal discussions. And that raises another uncomfortable but necessary question. What happens if the Steelers don't love any of the quarterbacks who realistically fall to them? That possibility exists too. And if that's the case, then this interest in Simpson becomes even more revealing. It would suggest the Steelers might be willing to wait another year, keep building the roster, and position themselves more aggressively for a future quarterback class if they don't believe the value aligns in 2026. That kind of patience requires confidence in the coaching staff, confidence in roster development, confidence that you won't waste another season spinning your wheels. McCarthy's presence helps sell that internally. Players trust him, veterans believe in his offensive structure, and that buys the organization credibility when asking everyone to stay aligned during uncertainty at the most important position. For fans, this is the hardest part. Waiting is uncomfortable. Watching quarterbacks you like go to other teams hurts, but there is something different about how this is unfolding. It feels quieter, more deliberate, less frantic, and that usually means the Steelers believe they are closer than people on the outside think. Whether Ty Simpson becomes a Steeler or not, his name surfacing right now tells us the Steelers are finally back to thinking like a franchise that wants sustained success, not temporary relief. The next quarterback decision will not be accidental. It will be intentional, expensive in some way, and defining. And that's exactly why this story matters far more than a single report or a single prospect. This is about identity, about direction, about whether Pittsburgh Pittsburgh is ready to commit to the next era the same way it once committed to the last one. And the longer this plays out, the more you realize the Steelers are intentionally letting silence do some of the work. There are no leaks screaming about desperation, no public pressure campaign, no rush to label one path as the only solution. That restraint is not accidental. It's the byproduct of an organization that understands how fragile quarterback decisions are when emotion takes over. Inside the building, this is about stacking information. How does the board look if quarterbacks start flying early? How many teams ahead of Pittsburgh realistically need a quarterback versus how many might pivot at the last second? What is the true internal grade on Ty Simpson compared to the rest of the class? And most importantly, how confident are you that this player can eventually become more than just a starter, but a difference maker in January football? That last question is the one that separates safe decisions from franchise-altering ones. The Steelers are not hunting for good enough. They've lived in that space before, and they know how limiting it is. If they move significant assets for a quarterback, it won't be because they feel pressured. It will be because they believe the player can carry the standard of the organization forward. There's also a reality fans should prepare for. This process may not give immediate clarity. Draft weekend might come and go without Pittsburgh making a dramatic quarterback move. Rodgers might return and push the conversation another year down the road, or the board might break in a way that forces a fast, aggressive decision. All of those outcomes are on the table, and none of them mean the Steelers don't have a plan. What matters is that the plan exists at all. That's the real takeaway here. Interest in a quarterback like Ty Simpson signals preparation. It signals conviction forming quietly. It signals that when the Steelers finally make their move at quarterback, it won't feel random or rushed. It will feel earned through evaluation and patience. This is the uncomfortable middle ground between eras where answers aren't public yet, but direction is starting to take shape. And for the first time in a while, it feels like Pittsburgh is approaching that moment with discipline instead of hope alone. And maybe the most important part of this entire conversation is understanding that the Steelers are no longer chasing certainty, they're chasing alignment. Alignment between the coaching staff, the front office, and the long-term vision of what this team is supposed to look like when the games matter most. That's why you haven't heard reckless promises or dramatic declarations. Those usually come from teams that are unsure of themselves. What Pittsburgh is doing instead is quietly stress-testing every possible outcome. If Rodgers returns, how does the offense evolve under McCarthy with another year of continuity? If he doesn't, who can realistically bridge the gap without stalling the growth of the roster? And if a quarterback like Ty Simpson truly matches what they want philosophically and schematically, how far are they willing to go to secure that future? These are not emotional questions. They are structural ones. They define how long your competitive window stays open. The Steelers believe their window is open right now, which is why they can't afford to get this wrong.